Good evening, everybody. When Brenda Bannon contacted me a good wee while ago about speaking here tonight, because it was focused on the responsorial psalm, I immediately said yes. There was a thud at the other end because Brenda didn't seem to have had that experience from asking anyone to speak before. But just to humble me, in the weeks that ensued, I couldn't come up with anything. And it was when I came in from visiting a school on Monday, I found a note from the secretary saying that the organisers of these nights in Omagh would like to be furnished with some background biographical details so I could be introduced to you. My first reaction was to say, oh no. I didn't use those two words, by the way. And then my next reaction was to wonder why. Why would people from these parishes want to or need to know anything about Perpetua McNulty? But my reaction actually set me thinking, and it gave me the kickstart to share a few thoughts with you this evening. Because it helped me realise that we do have a need to know other people's story. We also have a need to tell parts of our story. And there are parts of our story which we don't need to share with too many people, except the people that we can trust and we know will hold it as sacred. Part of the work I do is to give days of retreat to young people in schools. And it never ceases to amaze me just how often girls and fellas will ask you questions like, how did you know you were going to be a nun? And did God talk to you? And does God still talk to you? And I suppose that really does bring us somewhere close to the theme of tonight, the theme of response. On Monday and Tuesday, you have already spent some time exploring what is going on in the liturgy of the Word at Mass. You heard Father Jerry talk about God, His Word being proclaimed, and you heard Father Mark talking about listening and the presence of God. Tonight we're considering what it means to respond. And I suppose in the liturgy of the Word, we respond in different ways. We immediately respond to the first reading with the responsorial psalm. We respond after the gospel and after hearing the homily. We respond by professing our faith as a community. And we respond to this great God of ours by bringing our petitions in the prayer of the faithful. And despite my reaction on Monday, I've decided to tell you a little bit about myself. I come from a family of 5. I come from Strabane, and in Strabane we would have been known as a musical family. I would have played in the Western Youth Orchestra along with your organist here, Paul Pritchard, and a few others. But I would have played as well with an Achille band along with that great musical dynasty of Omagh, the Minor family. They were probably the equivalent, but on a much bigger scale, to the McNultys. So 2 of my sisters and my brother were and are musical. But it is probably my eldest sister who has taught me the most about listening and hearing. She doesn't play any instrument, and she doesn't sing. She doesn't speak like you and I do, because Assumpta was born deaf. It must have been very hard for her growing up, because we would all have been sawing away at fiddles and cellos and things and hammering notes out on a piano, and she was profoundly deaf. The only instrument that she had any affection for was the cello, which I played, because she could put her hand on the instrument, the vibration. I remember when we were older teenagers, we would go to the disco on a Friday night in the parish hall. We used to hop off the bus and probably throw our violins and cellos and things into a corner somewhere and prefer to enter into ABBA and status quo. That shows my age now. And we'd bring a sumpter with us. We loved it. But then there was one Christmas when a sumpter was going to a deaf dinner dance, a dinner dance for the deaf community. She asked us to go with her. In truth, we didn't want to go. In fact, we fought about going, and in the end, our parents made us go. But that deaf dinner dance probably taught me more about communications than any course that I have done ever since. We were the only, myself and my two sisters, were the only hearing people at the dinner dance. The speeches were phenomenal because we did sign language at home with the sumpter, but she lip reads a good wee bit. And the speeches went so fast. They were nearly over and they would start clapping, so we'd clap too. And it was a very strange experience, but it was a very profound experience because what it taught me was that not only do we sometimes not know the language that other people are speaking, but we may not be able to inhabit their world. To be deaf in a hearing, speaking world must be very difficult. But to be hearing in a deaf world was quite a unique and unforgettable experience. A second reflection I had on communications when I was thinking about what this theme is, we respond, was when I went to see a play by Brian Friel, who I think is from around these parts as well, has his roots here in Oma, a play called Translations. He's one of the finest playwrights from these parts and indeed from our country. He's probably better known for the Dancing at Lunasa, which kind of burst onto the creative world around the same time as Riverdance did. In Translations, the British Army have arrived in a Gaeltacht area, Ballybeg, to find the translations for the place names, the Irish place names. But there's a subplot when Myra, a local girl, falls in love with one of the soldiers. So much of the lighter and more comic moments in the play are when in the dialogue that takes place between these two young lovers. She speaks in Irish, not understanding a word he's saying in English, and he speaks in English, not understanding a word, and yet they find a way of communicating. Essentially, the message of the play is about language, language that gives us our identity. Language contains deeper layers of meaning which lie beneath the surface. The word for chapel in Irish is teachtain phobal, which actually translates not as the house of God, but as the house of the people. The phrase euch in Irish is normally translated as hello, but many of us know that it translates literally as God be with you. How rich and beautiful our national language is. It reveals something to us about how close, as an Irish people, we felt God is and was. And so we come to the focus of this evening, the responsorial psalm. It's wonderful the way in the liturgy of the Eucharist, when we think of Mass, we nearly always think of the liturgy of the Eucharist, where the bread and wine are taken from the earth, are acknowledged as being a gift from God, and we offer those back to God, transformed. In the liturgy of the Word, there's a parallel that goes on, because we hear the first reading, and instead of a reader reading through a psalm, it is deliberately organized in such a way that we participate in it. But the psalm has been inspired by God. So we take the very gift that God gave us, the gift of his word in the Bible, and we use that to give thanks back to him and to reply to the first reading. In my own life, the Psalms are often on my lips. Part of my life as a sister of mercy is that I begin and end each day praying the Psalms. In my work with that beautiful choir, which is a privilege to be part of, I have the joy of singing the psalm on a Sunday at worship. But deeper than my responsibilities as a sister of mercy or as a choir director or anything is my responsibility as a baptized Christian to learn the prayers that Jesus himself said. The Psalms were the Psalms that the Jewish people would have prayed over and over again. These Psalms, these prayers, have the capacity to speak to the reality of our lives in the ups and downs, times when we need to trust, times when we are afraid. They bring us hope, but most of all, they bring us into God. I'm sure if we just stop for now, many of us could just think off the top of our heads some of the lines of the better known Psalms. I wonder, can you remember the psalm that was used last Sunday at Mass? In God alone is my soul at rest. Many of us know the Lord is my shepherd. There is nothing I shall want. Next week is the beginning of Lent. And each year on the first Sunday of Lent, whether it's Matthew, Mark, or Luke, the gospel is always the temptations that Jesus endured when he went into the desert. And in that gospel story, what we hear is that we do not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. The Catholic Church in the past was slow to encourage us to embrace the sacred scriptures. I remember when we were young, I don't know about your house, but we had a fantastic, beautiful, big brute of a Bible. It was leather bound. There was a plastic cover over it, and it was in a box. And it was kept in the best press in the house. We never opened it. Thankfully, today, the Church encourages us to meet God in the Word as well as in the Eucharist. This parish here and the surrounding parishes have a resource that makes many other parts of the diocese a bit envious. In and around Omagh, there is a group of people that have a very special ministry. These people are collectively known as prayer guides. Some of you will know some prayer guides. They are some of the finest people that you will ever meet, salt of the earth. They are the backbone of much that goes on in your parishes. These people have come to love and know the scriptures, and they have been trained to help others meet God in the Word. I'm aware that in the coming weeks, as part of your preparation for the Eucharistic Congress, these guides will help you to meet God in a particular way in the Sunday Gospels. You know, and I know, that we live in changing times in relation to church, especially the church here in Ireland. Sometimes you wonder what the Holy Spirit was at whenever the Pope decided to put the Eucharistic Congress for the whole world to locate it in Ireland in 2012, and the next thing was that we heard about the awful abuse scandal. We live in changing times in relation to the level of commitment and the practicing of the faith.